going to be looking at game 2 of the tiebreaker in round 5 between Vassily Ivanchuk and Teimour Radjabov in the 2011 FIDE World Cup. So they drew game 1 and they had exchanged points. They drew game 1 of the tiebreaker and they had exchanged points in the regulation time. So this, a winner-take-all match here, or a draw would go to the second round of Rapids. So Ivanchuk just opening up with G3 and going into, more or less main lines with C4 here. And Radjabov with C6. It's a very solid line. And Queen B6. And White's idea with bringing the Queen out, put a little pressure on B7, kind of entice Black to bring his Queen out, when White is going to be able to double these pawns a lot, which are going to be weak. Maybe White can try to go after the B6 pawn later. Bishop F5, seizing a little space in the center. And so Ivanchuk, he goes ahead and trades, and this is what I mean, some liquidation in the center, and all of a sudden that pawn could maybe become vulnerable a little later. So A3, it was still possible to play knight B4 based on this pin here and maybe try to weasel the knight in or just take it back to C6. But Radjabov just straight with rook C8 here. Bishop G5, a nice move. Definitely, I don't know. I like Bishop G5, but I think Radjabov should have played F6. to try to play for E5 and try to play a little more aggressively to open the center. Maybe Ivanchuk was trying to entice that. Maybe he can just play, bishop back. But still, I think maybe Black can play E5. Just because, the knight's on E1, this rook's back here. Black is ahead in development, so it makes sense to open the center. So King F8, anyway, bringing the king closer is not a bad idea, as the queens are already off. Bishop has to take. The rook still needs to defend this pawn on D4. And now just a little bit of maneuvering. Knight D3. And Bishop B5. This makes sense. Although Radjabov's not really doing anything productive, while White is improving the placement of his pieces. And a nice little tactic here with Rook C1. So obviously, Black doesn't want to go into this. Just let this rook get active for no reason. So instead, knight to A6, and here I think Radjabov made a pretty big mistake. Played King 8, and in this position, Bishop D7, which essentially gives White the 2 bishops. And you think it might not be that significant, materials dead even, but the advantage of the 2 bishops coupled with the fact that White is going to get a little more space, and this pawn on B6 is weak, maybe gives White, some hopes of winning here. So I think better than Bishop B5 was F6 to prevent knight to E5. And again, why not just play for E5 and gain space for Black? Maybe try to create a pass pawn in the center. So Bishop D7, knight E5. And, what else? Radjabov made a choice on which bishop to give up, based on the fact that White's pawn structure is all on dark squares. So he thought it would maybe, giving up the dark squared bishop would be less impactful, as White's dark squared bishop isn't that strong here. So, Black does have, he's got some pluses in activity, but nothing real solid. Now, I guess with knight to A6, he was threatening to infiltrate, so Ivanchuk just rook B2. And A4, gaining a little bit of space. It was really instructive how Ivanchuk just slowly built his advantage here and try to create more weaknesses to attack on Black's side. So very instructive. So he starts with E4. And it seems a little weird here. He throws in a little check. It seems a little weird to have these doubled pawns. Why would White kind of volunteer for these isolated pawns? But what just happened is that E4 opened up, it opens up this bishop here to put a lot of pressure. Because, just looking at all of Black's dark squares, they're extremely weak. So this is what happens, with the 2 bishops. And White's got a little bit of space, this pawn wedge on E5. So e4, it really makes a lot of sense. Also, an advantage of playing e4, which really makes a lot of sense, is it controls d5 and f5. You know, it'd be very easy for black to maneuver a knight to d5, where it would be extremely strong. So the pawn on e4, really killing it. You could also say an open f5. So white is tied up for the moment with a little bit of defending this e4 pawn, but he's also got some pretty tricky stuff along this diagonal, and black's king really can't get active, so white's going to keep building his space advantage. Here Ivanchuk, I don't think he thought for very long in this move. It seems about 40 seconds to sacrifice a pawn. And so knight takes a4 and rook c2, and he sacked the pawn to gain activity. And, you know, these doubled pawns here on the b file are not exactly, you know, they don't exactly count for a whole pawn, especially when it's, you know, directly in front of another white pawn here. So the pressure on the c file, it's a pretty interesting pawn sack, but it makes a lot of sense because white doesn't really risk much by sacking the pawn. I mean, these two pawns, white's going to be able to draw this all day with the two bishops for sure. So he's not really risking anything, and it was kind of tough for him to find another way to penetrate into black's position. The only other thing I can think of to get in, but I mean, still, I mean, black can play b5 and maybe liquidate some of these queenside pawns, and white's always going to have the weakness on e4. So it's a little tricky for white. So just b4 makes a lot of sense. Very nice move. The pressure on the c file, and here Radjabov, I didn't really like this b. I don't think he reacted correctly. He played b5 here. I think the best move was just, you know, rook d7 loses immediately. This should be pointed out. b5, and that's actually leading to mate. So rook d7 doesn't work. Rook c8. I think that was the best move. If b5 right away, we just trade some pieces, and black's got a perfectly defensible position. And if even bishop f1, I mean, just the bishop back, black seems fine. Black is fine here. So I think rook c8 by Radjabov would have been a much better move, because with b5, now bishop f1, and it seems, you know, white's going to get this pawn. Even rook d7, again, bishop takes b5. The same tactic works. So, you know, and rook c8, now, you know, black is really trying to get himself in trouble. So Radjabov with knight b6, bishop takes. So white gets the pawn back, but more importantly, retains the initiative. And now rook c8. So you can see now with rook c8 here is like, it's a lot looser for black, and white's bishops have really opened up in the position. So, let's see. Rook a2, and here I think Radjabov should have tried to repeat, because black, you know, black's dark square weaknesses are just, you know, white in the endgame is either going to be able to run his king to the h6 or try to run it to c5. So rook a2, I think black should have played rook a8. And this is not the position you really want to be in, but I don't see a clear way to get in for white. If king d4, knight b6, I don't know. Maybe, you know, at first I thought knight a4, but I guess kings come to d6 here. This is bad stuff, but maybe knight c8. Maybe black, you know, can build a fortress here. It looks like he can. But that's not a really fun, you know, that's not going to be a fun defense, especially in a blitz game. This is a rapid 25 minutes and 10-second increment. So king d4 and now b5. So Radjabov chose instead to block the a file with knight a4. I mean, it makes sense. The knight needs to get some activity. And now Ivanchuk, you know, very instructive game what to do. You know, black's defensive is passive. So white has made a lot of progress. You know, he's gained a lot of space. His king has come a long way. And now he's going to open up the h-file. You know, he's trying to get this rook in, so now he's going to open up the h-file and to swing the rook over maybe and get it active there. So he's trying to create another weakness or another point of entry into black's position with h4 and h5. So black really can't make any progress. And, you know, not where he wants to be. I mean, the rook doesn't even have any entry squares along the c-file. So now Ivanchuk, you know, rook h8, still maneuvering. Black throws in a little check to kick the king. And now a really nice maneuver, transferring the bishop to the queen side, where it's going to make this knight feel uncomfortable, and trying to just massage black's position to figure out the best way in. You know, what's going to be making the most of the advantage. So now with rook c2, this was also an idea with bishop to d8 and transferring the bishop to a5. Black can't defend the c-file. So now white's got the open file. He's got some space on the king side, and he just needs to swing the bishop in to start harassing black's king. Now that he controls the c-file, you know, that was really the point of the maneuver, I guess, with the bishop. So now black, you know, black couldn't play rook c7 or keep it there. So now knight b6. And I want to go back just real quick. I think here was where Radjabov messed up with bishop d7, what he played in the game. I think knight b6 immediately was better, although it's definitely not going to be fun. So there's pawn takes. I guess, you know, pawn takes thrown in. Either way, you can do something like this. This is what I was looking at. Rook c8 here. So probably bishop d7, and now rook here. And in this position, if the bishop goes to c6, white's got a nice little shot to open up the position. And the king is just going to penetrate on the dark squares. Win b5, maybe e6. Black really has no chances. But bishop e8, it's still, you know, white's not going to, maybe he can't get in on the king side, but what he's going to do is close it up with g5 here. And black has absolutely no counterplay. If black takes with the king, probably just bishop e2 and the same thing. The king's going to run over. There's no way for black to get active. So a lot of tactics going on in this game. But here, bishop d7 first. So Ivanchuk, bishop d8. And now with takes. So here's a problem with black's play. You know, even though material it's dead equal, the two bishops and the dark square weakness, Ivanchuk busts in. So in the game, he played f takes. That lost pretty quick. I was also looking, you know, h takes loses right away as well. Rook h2. And the rook was just so flexible in the second rank. And black is just going to get mated here. Also, king takes. I didn't see like a right away forced win here, but I assume there's got to be something. I was thinking bishop f6. And black has a lot of replies, but I think, you know, rook to h2. If black tries to get active here, for example, and to harass the bishop, maybe bishop e2, and black is toast. There's no way he's going to get out with this king. Also possible, let's say, I thought maybe bishop here. Maybe something like rook here, and with knight here, maybe you got this. And black is just totally just busted. I mean, let's just say something like this. It's totally over. So anyway, could've, should've, doesn't matter. Radjabov here. He played pawn takes and just a simple tactic. Bishop takes b6. Radjabov resigned because rook c7 is going to win the bishop. So a really, you know, I like the game a lot. Ivanchuk just turning the wheels, turning the screws on Radjabov with the two bishops, and eventually transforming that into a material advantage due to a tactical oversight and time trouble by Radjabov. So this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.